In 1955, a race was held in France. That day, the fastest cars in the world were on the track: Mercedes, Jaguar, Ferrari. But no one knew that day that this race would turn into the biggest disaster in automotive history. In just a few seconds, a car was launched into the air and flew toward the grandstands. That night, 84 people lost their lives. This is the story of the 1955 Le Mans disaster. In the 1950s, there was intense competition in the automotive world. Brands weren't just building cars, they were also trying to prove who was the fastest. There was only one reason for that. Back then, the best way to advertise the cars you produced was through racing. In short, the philosophy was, win on Sunday, sell on Monday. And it really was true. At the time, Formula One had just started, but wasn't yet popular. Le Mans was the most famous race in the world, and whoever won that race would sell the most cars that year. The three favorites of the race were Mercedes, Jaguar, and Ferrari. All three brands had won this race before, and came with new advanced cars. Mercedes developed a special car for this race, the Mercedes 300 SLR. It was an incredible machine for its time. It could reach speeds of around 300 kilometers per hour. The 300 SLR had a body made from an ultra-light magnesium alloy called Electron. However, the car lacked the more effective, state-of-the-art disc brakes found in the rival Jaguar D-Type. This detail will become important later in the story. Race day had finally arrived. The race was set to begin at 4:00 p.m. Mercedes team manager Alfred Neubauer assembled a multinational team for the race. One of them was the French driver Pierre Levick. He had received an offer from Mercedes and joined the team in 1955. This was a great opportunity for him, as he had never won Le Mans before, and this was a strong chance to finally achieve that. During the practice sessions before the race, Pierre sensed that something was wrong. He said he felt uncomfortable inside the car. Despite this, he still chose to compete and was ready to take to the track in the 300 SLR. The track was very old. Safety measures were extremely inadequate. When the track safety measures were originally designed, cars could reach a maximum speed of only 90 kilometers per hour. However, by 1955, cars were reaching speeds of over 300 kilometers per hour. There were no barriers between the pit lane and the racing line. Moreover, there was nothing but a small 1-2 meter earthen bank separating the track from the grandstands. In addition, drivers didn't even wear seat belts. As the whistles blew and the race began, the three major brands were leading the race. Slowly, the moment when the disaster would occur was approaching. 2 hours had passed. While Ferrari was falling behind, Mercedes driver Fangio and Jaguar driver Hawthorne were exchanging the lead between themselves. By lap 35, the leading cars needed to make their pit stops. With the signal given, Jaguar driver Hawthorne raised his hand to enter the pit. He suddenly moved from the middle of the racing line to the right. Thanks to his advanced braking system, he slowed down extremely hard. Right behind him was his teammate. When he noticed the sudden deceleration, he steered from the right lane into the middle lane to avoid crashing into Hawthorne. Pierre, who was coming from behind at around 200 kilometers per hour and determined to complete another lap, noticed this sudden maneuver too late. There was nothing he could do anymore. He crashed into the car in front of him from behind at 200 kilometers per hour. His right wheel rode up onto the hood of the car ahead, acting like a ramp. His right wheel rode up onto the hood of the car ahead, acting like a ramp. He launched into the air, flipping over as he passed above the other car. He flew for about 80 meters and landed right in the middle of the grandstand. He bounced 3 times. While the car was flying through the air, heavy parts such as the engine, transmission, radiator, and hood broke off and rained down onto the spectators in the stands. The shattered car eventually fell onto the fuel tank, igniting a massive fire. This fire could not be extinguished for hours. Pierre was thrown from the car and died instantly upon hitting the ground due to a severe head injury. While all this was happening, his body lay motionless and partially burned on the ground for nearly an hour. Later, an official came and covered him with a sheet. The most tragic part was that he had been thrown right into the area where his wife was, and he died there. There was a terrifying sense of fear and panic spreading through the grandstands. The dead and injured were lying on the ground, waiting for help. It was expected that the race officials would stop the race. However, despite everything, the race was not stopped. In later statements, the race director explained that stopping the race could have caused thousands of people to leave the area, potentially blocking medical teams from reaching the injured. In my opinion, this was the right decision. Jaguar driver Hawthorne, thinking he had caused the accident, got out of the car. However, officials put him back in the car and told him to continue the race. At around 1:45 a.m., with approval from Stuttgart, Mercedes decided to withdraw from the race. They called their cars into the pits, and by early morning, the entire Mercedes team had returned home. After making this decision, Mercedes asked the Jaguar team whether they would do the same out of respect for those who had lost their lives. However, the Jaguar team refused this request and continued the race. With Mercedes withdrawing and the Ferrari suffering mechanical failures, Jaguar no longer had any serious rivals and went on to win the race. The race ended on Sunday, but there was no celebration. When British driver Hawthorne received his medal, he was heavily criticized in the media for drinking champagne and laughing. A French journalist made headlines with an iconic phrase, "To your health, Mr. Hawthorne." According to later reports, 84 people lost their lives and around 180 were injured. It remains the deadliest accident in motorsport history. The disaster led to immediate racing bans in several countries, including France, Spain, Switzerland, and West Germany. Most countries lifted these bans within a year, but Switzerland's ban lasted over 70 years, until May 2022. Despite the tragedy, the remaining races of the 1955 season were completed, and Mercedes secured the championship before withdrawing from motorsports. No single driver was officially held responsible for the crash. It was ultimately deemed a tragic racing incident caused by poor track safety. In the end, a disaster that claimed 84 lives was closed without a clear culprit. That day, no one went there expecting such a tragedy. They came to watch a race, to cheer, and to return home. But in just a few milliseconds, everything changed and history's worst racing disaster unfolded.